if you were in a gun battle and someone was shooting at you and someone went into cardiac arrest, would you stop what you were doing to mitigate the threat, or in order to immediately perform CPR? In your experience as a police officer, especially in the more recent era, have you been in a situation where bystanders begin to film you and your activities?
Yes.
Does that happen more and more these days than it did 5 years ago?
Yes.
And have you been in a situation in your career as a law enforcement officer where the crowd starts to yell at you?
Yes.
Or becomes a little more volatile?
Yes.
As an officer, does that cause you concern?
Yes.
Generally speaking, as an officer with 27 years of experience, if you're dealing with one potential suspect and then a new perceived threat emerges, but you know that person needs medical attention, do you deal with the medical attention and ignore the threat, or do you deal with the threat and then deal with the medical attention?
I guess you'd have to deal with both kind of simultaneously.
And that depends on the circumstances. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So for example, if you were in a gun battle and someone was shooting at you and someone went into cardiac arrest, would you stop what you were doing to mitigate the threat, or in order to immediately perform CPR? Or would you continue with the threat?
I'd mitigate that threat to me.
If the subject is no longer breathing, would it be important for the officer to take that into account to reassess and reevaluate what they're doing?
Yes.
Or if the subject no longer has a pulse, for example, would that be important information in the critical thinking model for the officer to take in, consider, and decide to maybe take a different step?
Yes.
And in such a case, would it be possible then that the officer would not need to do something violent, but would need to do something less violent?
Yes.
Like render medical assistance?
Yes.
You were asked about a threat assessment. Is that right?
Yes.
And you were asked about an example of whether an officer would perceive a threat if there was a gun battle and need to make a determination between medical attention and that kind of extreme threat, right?
Yes.
You reviewed the body-worn cameras, correct?
I've reviewed body-worn camera footage.
You didn't see a gun battle?
No.